In this video, we're going to look at order of operations and decimals. So how do we incorporate that order of operations with decimals? And this will give us some more practice at multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting decimals as well. So if we look at an example like this, 2.5 times bracket 4.1 minus 3.4. So we know we have to do our brackets first. Now I'm going to do a bunch of work on the side here so that I don't clutter my answer here. So 4.1 minus 3.4, we know we have to do first because that appears in brackets. So 4.1 minus 3.4, and 1 minus 4 is a negative, so I'm going to have to borrow from this column. So the 4 becomes a 3, and the 1 becomes 11. And now 11 minus 4 is 7. And remember, when you're adding and subtracting, the decimals all stay in a row. And then 3 minus 3 is 0. So this gives me 0.7. So what I'm going to do now is, just so you can follow, 2.5 times, and now this bracket, when I did it over here, was equal to 0.7. And now 2.5 times 0.7, and we simply multiply here. So 5 times 7 is 35, and remember, we write the 5, we carry the 3 over, and now my next multiplication is 2 times 7, which is 14, plus 3 is 17. 2 decimals in my question, so 2 decimals in my answer, and 2.5 times 0.7 is 1.75. And again, it should make sense to you here. We're taking a number and we're multiplying it by a number that's less than 1. So we would expect our answer to be smaller than what we started with. And indeed it is. So if you take a look at another problem getting a little bit more complicated here, 9.3 minus 4.3 divided by 5 plus 3 times 1.7. So now I'm going to underline in red what I've got to look after first. I'm going to look after the 4.3 divided by 5 and the 3 times 1.7. You could really think of these as being in brackets if you wanted to, because we know we have to do those first. So I'm going to go ahead and do those. I've got 9.3 minus. Now 4.3 divided by 5. 5 into 4.3. My decimal moves up. 5 goes into 4. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 5, sorry about that. 0 times 5 is 0, and now I subtract, and I'm left with 4. And now I bring down my next number, and now that 43, how many times does 5 go into 43? Well, we know that 8 times 5 is 40, so that's pretty close. 8 times 5 is 40. 40 gets written underneath, and we subtract. 43 minus 40 is 3. We bring down our next number. And how many times does 5 go into 30? 5 goes into 36 times. So this whole bracket here, 4.3 divided by 5, is equal to 0.86. And now I need 3 times 1.7. So again, I'm going to do that outside here. 3 times 1.7. And I know when I did this multiplication, when I do this multiplication, I left my decimals in there. It doesn't matter whether you leave them in or not. Perhaps it's easier to count them in the end if you leave them in. Traditionally, I don't. I just get it in my head how many decimal places will be in the answer in the end, but up to you. So now 3 times 7 is 21. So I write the 1, I carry the 2. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. And so there's 1 decimal point in my question, so I need 1 decimal point in my answer, and 3 times 1.7 is 5.1. And now I've got 9.3 minus 0.86 plus 5.1. So I'm running out of room on the left there. So 9.3 now minus 0.86. And remember, now we need to put a placeholder there. We're adding and subtracting, so our decimals are stacked. And you see 0 minus 6, can't do it. So I need to borrow from the column to the left. I'll do that in red. My 3 becomes a 2, and my 0 becomes a 10. Now, 10 minus 6 is 4. And now I run into the same problem on my decimal point here. Here, 2 minus 8, I can't do. So I change my 9 into an 8 and change my 2 into a 12. And I borrow 1 from the 1's column. And now 12 minus 8 is 4. And 8 minus 0 is 8. So now 9.3 minus 0.86 is 8.44. And now I have to add 5.1. So if I have to add a 5.1, again, I'll put in a placeholder. 4 plus 0 is 4. 4 and 1 is 5. And 8 plus 5 is 13. So I land up with 13.54. And one more example here, and we have a 4.71 minus 3.14, that's in brackets, plus 9.2 times 3.1. So I have to do my brackets first. So I'm going to do a 4.71 minus 3.14. 1 minus 4 I can't do. I need to borrow 1. So I change the 7 to 6, and the 1 goes to 11. 11 minus 4 is 7. 6 minus 1, remember your decimals all on a line. 6 minus 1 is 5, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So 4.71 minus 3.14 is 1.57. And now I've got to do this multiplication, so I'm going to leave my plus sign there, and I'm just going to multiply 9.2 and 3.1. How many decimals in my question? There's 2, so there'll be 2 decimals in my answer. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 9 is 9. Put your 0 and start your next call. 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 9 is 27. And so now we add 2. 9 plus 6 is 15. Carry the 1. 7 plus 1 is 8, and 2 plus 0, if we wanted to write it there, is 0. And there was 2 decimals in my question, so there's 2 decimals in my answer, and this is then going to be 28.52. And now I have to add 28.52 at 1.57. 7 plus 2 is 9. 5 plus 5 is 10, so I write the 0, I carry the 1 to the next column. 8 plus 1 is 9, plus the one I carried is 10. I write in the 0, carry the 1. 2 plus 1 plus 0 is 3. So I get a final answer of 30.009. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of how we sort of put decimals and order of operations together in sort of one larger problem. In this video, we're going to take a look at dividing decimals. Not as ugly as example 3 in the concept video, but here are 3 questions. So what I want you to do is copy these down on a piece of paper. Use the concept video as a model, and pause the video, then calculate the answer to all 3 questions, and then resume the video and follow along and see if your answers were correct. So in the first problem here, we have 12.6 divided by 3. So I have 3 divided into my long division symbol, 12.6, and I can add some zeros just in case I might need them. And don't forget to put your decimal directly above where it is in the question. And so now we say, how many times does 3 go into 12 evenly? What's the nearest whole number? And we can see that that is 4. And now we multiply 4 times 3 and write the result, 12, underneath. We then subtract out, and we get 0. So in fact, 3 goes into 12 exactly 4 times, but that's fine. Now we carry down the next number, and if the first one is a 0 here, that's fine. Now how many times does 3 go into 6? And 3 goes into 6 2 times. And now we multiply 2 times 3 is 6. We write it underneath and subtract, and 6 minus 6 is 0. So we know then that 12.6 divided by 3 is equal to 4.2. If you look at example 2, now we have 18.4 divided by 3.2. But remember, we never want to have a decimal here. So instead of doing 18.4 divided by 3.2, we're going to do 184 divided by 32. It will give us the same number, the same answer numerically as a response. So 32 divided into 184, and I'm going to add a few zeros just in case I need them. Put my decimal right above, and now I start. So how many times does 32 go into 184? I'm going to say, well, 32 times 10 is 320, so I'm going to try 5. And 32 times 5, well, 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 60. Now when I subtract here, 184, I get 24. If this number here, this 24, if it's larger than 32, then you just have to increase this number by 1, right? So as long as you make a guess that's close, you might have to do some erasing, but you'll know if when you subtract, if you get more than the number that you started with, that was you were dividing by, then you know you've got to bump it up 1 number. Okay, so carrying on then, we carry down the 0, and now we have 240. And 32 into 240, I'll say is 7. And 7 times 32, 2 times 7 is 14. 3 times 7 is 21, plus 1 is 22. So we get 224. and now we have to subtract. And 0 minus 4 we can't do here, so we've got to borrow 1 from the next column over, so that becomes a 3, and the 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6, and 3 minus 2 is 1. Again, look, this number here is less than 32. And now we bring down 0, and we say how many times will 32 go into 160? And if you're paying attention, you look up here, we can see it's going to be exactly 5. 5 times 32 is 160. We write that result on the bottom, and then we subtract, and we get 0 remainder. So we should say then that 18.4 divided by 3.2 is equal to 5.75. And in the last example, we are 53.3 divided by 8.2. So again, we're going to do 82 and 533 instead of the 8.2, right? We check this one over 1 decimal place, and we check this one over 1 decimal place. And so now we have 533 over 82. And I'm going to make a mistake here intentionally. So let's watch this error. Let's say I say that it's 5, just to explain why I'm at the off part. 5 times 82, 82 times 5, 2 times 5 is 10, 8 times 5 is 40 plus 1 is 41. So if I said that the number was a 5 there, 5 times 82 is 410. Well, look what happens now. When I do my subtraction, I get 3, 2, 1. I get 123. 123 is larger than 82. And so I know that the number can't be 5. I've got to pick the largest number, and I'm going to have to change that to a 6. So you see what I mean when the number underneath that 123, if it's larger than 82, it means you can squeeze one more 82 out of there. So I hope that makes sense. Now 6 times 82, 6 times 82, 2 times 6 is 12, carry the 1, 8 times 6, 8 times 6 is 48, plus 1 is 49. So I'm going to get 6 times 82 and write my result underneath. Notice that it looks a lot cleaner now that I'm not drawing lines everywhere. And now I subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1. 3 minus 9, I have to borrow from this column. So I change the 5 to a 4, and the 3 becomes a 13. And now 13 minus 9 is 4. And now I get a 0 there. And I'm going to say the closest number is 5, and 82, if we look over here, 82 times 5 is 410. So one more time, multiply what's on top by what's in front, write it underneath with the subtraction, and we get a remainder of 0. So 53.3 divided by 8.2 is equal to 6.5. So that gives you some practice with dividing decimals.